Hello everyone. Today I want to talk to you about a dream so many of us share. The golden years spent surrounded by our loving children and joyful grandchildren. It's an idyllic vision, isn't it? The perfect way to end a life well lived. But what if I told you this beautiful dream could become the very thing that costs you your happiness? What if the path to being closer to your family actually leads you to lose yourself? That's the paradox we're going to explore today. And I promise, what you discover might just surprise you. To understand this, let me introduce you to someone. Let's call her Eleanor. At 72, after her husband passed away, Eleanor felt a familiar sense of loneliness. Her son Marcus and his wife, Clara, lived in a bustling suburb just an hour away, and they insisted that she move in with them. They spoke of the happy chaos of family life, of her two young grandchildren, Leo and Stella, and of how much easier it would be for everyone. Eleanor's heart swelled. She truly believed she would be a vital part of their lives, a guiding light for the kids, and a comforting presence for Marcus and Clara. It sounded like the perfect new chapter. Her initial days were just like a dream, waking up to the sound of giggling children, the smell of fresh coffee, and the comforting sense of being needed. She helped Leo with his homework, taught Stella how to bake her famous oatmeal cookies, and became the family's trusted storyteller. The house was full of energy, and Eleanor felt more alive than she had in years. She truly believed she had found her purpose again. A recent study even says that living with grandkids can increase a grandparent's sense of purpose, and Eleanor was experiencing this firsthand. She felt as though she had rediscovered her own youth in their vibrant little smiles. But as with many things that seemed too good to be true, this is where the story took an unexpected turn. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, a routine began to solidify. The playful, occasional help became a constant, unspoken obligation. Eleanor's days were no longer her own. She was the morning alarm, the afternoon tutor, the evening chef, and the midnight comforting presence for a child with a bad dream. She found herself thinking about her old apartment, about the freedom to decide to read a book, or to simply watch the clouds drift by. She felt a pang of guilt, wondering how she could be so ungrateful when she had everything she ever wanted. You see, the ancient Stoics understood the importance of distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. The philosopher Epictetus pointed out that we have little time, and we waste a lot. Eleanor was beginning to feel that her time was no longer her own to manage. Her days were a whirlwind of activity, but she had lost the quiet moments of reflection, the solitude that had always replenished her. Psychologist Erik Erikson spoke about the importance of maintaining autonomy in old age, but Eleanor's autonomy was slowly being diluted in this mixture of family love and unspoken responsibility. One night, after putting the children to bed, she sat on the back porch and looked at the stars. A profound question echoed in her mind, asking if this was truly what she wanted for the rest of her life. The question hung there unanswered, as she struggled with a feeling she couldn't quite name. What had started as a loving choice now felt like a cage, albeit a golden one. This is where we confront a difficult truth that many elders face in silence: the emotional and physical burden of becoming a full-time, unpaid caregiver. It's so common that it's been given a name: the slave grandmother syndrome. It's not a new Netflix series, though it could be. It's a real psychological condition that describes the emotional and physical toll grandmothers experience when they lose their personal freedom and are constantly called upon to take care of the family's needs. On one hand, you love your grandchildren with all your heart and cherish every moment. On the other hand, you feel your life slipping through your fingers as you fold yet another pile of laundry or change another diaper. It's a beautiful but painful paradox. Studies show that this can have devastating effects on a person's mental health. The lack of recognition, physical exhaustion, and the loss of personal freedom can lead to depression and anxiety. It's like running an endless marathon, but no one is waiting at the finish line with a medal. Eleanor began to experience these symptoms. She was constantly tired, but she told herself it was normal, that it was just part of being a grandmother. But is it really normal to sacrifice your own well-being for that of others? This is where a profound psychological insight comes in. Psychologist Carol Gilligan discusses the care ethic and how women, in particular, are often socialized to prioritize the needs of others over their own. Eleanor was living this theory firsthand, sacrificing her time, her energy, and unknowingly, her happiness. She found herself looking out the window, longing for her old independence, for the day she could meet a friend for coffee without asking permission or juggling schedules. It's a tragic irony. She moved in with her family to find companionship, but in the process, she began to feel more alone than ever. Her daughter, Clara, also began to show a side that Eleanor hadn't seen before. What started as gentle suggestions became subtle criticisms, and then outright orders. Clara, for instance, once asked her mother how many times she had to be told that the kids don't like onions, her voice laced with frustration. The criticism hit Eleanor like a bucket of cold water. Slowly, Eleanor felt her space shrink and her voice fade. She was no longer a co-inhabitant, but an employee following instructions. This loss of independence can lead to an identity crisis and feelings of hopelessness in old age, as Erikson's theory warns. It's so ironic that in seeking love and support from our family, we can risk losing something as valuable as our own identity. Eleanor's once vibrant days, filled with plans and dreams, were now reduced to the mundane routine of childcare and household duties. She felt like an old piece of furniture, necessary perhaps, but taken for granted, and too worn out to be thrown away. How many elders are living this silent drama, seeking warmth, but finding an invisible cage? The Stoics believed that the purpose of life is to grow, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. But how can a person grow when they feel smaller and smaller every day in their own home? Get ready to discover how a lifelong friend and a dose of Stoic wisdom turned Eleanor's life around, with advice that challenges everything we think we know about aging and family. Eleanor felt trapped in this silent drama, but one day, a glimmer of hope appeared. Her dear friend, Maria, a woman full of life and laughter, decided to pay her a surprise visit. Maria arrived with a bag of freshly baked cookies and her trademark bright smile, but it faded the moment she saw Eleanor. Maria commented that Eleanor looked so tired, her voice filled with genuine concern. While they sat sharing a cup of coffee, Eleanor, who was always so meticulous, found herself too exhausted to even clean up the kitchen. When Maria asked if everything was all right, the floodgates opened. All the tiredness, frustration, and the profound feeling of being lost in a life she no longer recognized came pouring out. Eleanor confessed to feeling like she had lost herself, explaining she was no longer the Eleanor who loved to garden and read novels, but was now just grandma. Maria listened intently, her eyes filled with understanding. When Eleanor finished, Maria took her hands. She told Eleanor that she had gone through the very same thing. She recalled her children convincing her to move in, and then realizing after just 6 months that it was the biggest mistake of her life. Eleanor's eyes widened, and she expressed disbelief that Maria, who always seemed so happy and free, could have felt that way. Maria laughed softly. She acknowledged that it wasn't always like that, and that she had lost her independence and her essence. But one day, she recalled the words of the philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said that the only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. And from that moment on, she decided to be herself again. Eleanor listened, fascinated, as Maria told her about the brave decision to move into her own apartment. It wasn't easy, Maria admitted. Her children didn't understand at first. But over time, their relationship actually improved. They no longer saw her as a constant caretaker or a burden. They saw her as their mother, an independent and happy woman. Eleanor asked if she ever felt alone sometimes. Maria smiled, saying that while she sometimes did, the psychologist Carl Jung had explained that loneliness doesn't come from not having people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. And she added that since she regained her independence, her conversations with her children and grandchildren were so much richer and more meaningful. Maria's words resonated deeply with Eleanor. It was as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room, revealing a path she didn't know existed. True happiness Maria explained, comes from living on your own terms and maintaining a healthy balance between family responsibilities and taking care of yourself. Studies show that older adults who maintain their independence report higher levels of life satisfaction and lower rates of depression. With a cold cup of coffee in her hands and a heart full of newfound hope, Eleanor decided to face the challenge she never expected, to reclaim her life. She started with a small, simple step. She began taking a solitary walk in the park every morning. At first, she felt guilty for not being home helping out, but she soon discovered that this daily hour of solitude was an oasis in the desert of her busy life. During these walks, she began to reflect on her forgotten dreams and planned how to get them back. The next step was even bolder. She signed up for a painting workshop for seniors at the community center. She wondered if she would even remember how to paint anymore. But as the famous artist Pablo Picasso would say, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. And it found her. In the workshop, Eleanor not only rediscovered her passion for art, but also made new friends. Between brushstrokes and laughter, she realized she had been living on autopilot, forgetting that life, at any age, is full of possibilities. A Harvard University study showed that maintaining independence in old age not only improves mental health, but can also increase life expectancy by up to 5 years. Eleanor was living proof of this. With each new activity, with each personal decision, she felt herself rejuvenating. Of course, it wasn't always easy. There were days when guilt would threaten to return. She'd question if she was being selfish. But then she would remember Maria's wise advice, that you can't pour from an empty cup. Taking care of herself wasn't selfish. It was necessary to continue caring for others. As Eleanor regained her independence, she noticed surprising changes. Her energy increased, and her memory even seemed to improve. But the most significant change was in her relationship with her family. Paradoxically, by spending less time with them, the time they shared became more valuable and meaningful. She was no longer the tired, complaining woman, but a vibrant one with fascinating stories to tell. Finally, Eleanor gathered the courage to have a crucial conversation with her daughter, Clara. It was a day she knew would not be easy, but she also knew it was necessary. She told Clara that they needed to talk. Clara looked at her curiously, not imagining what was to come. Eleanor took a deep breath. She told her daughter that she had been thinking a lot lately and believed it was time for her to move into her own place. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara blinked several times, trying to process what she'd just heard. She asked her mom why, if she wasn't comfortable there, and if they had done something wrong. Eleanor smiled softly. She reassured her daughter that she had been wonderful, but that she needed to rediscover herself and have her own space. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre had said that the human being is condemned to be free, and Eleanor at 72 was choosing that freedom. Clara's reaction went from surprise to confusion, and then to a mix of sadness and understanding. She asked her mom if she would be okay alone, and what would happen if she got sick. Eleanor took her daughter's hands. She told Clara that she wasn't saying she was going to disappear, but that she just wanted her own space to grow and enjoy this stage of her life. She thought she would be a better grandmother if she had time for herself. Clara was silent for a moment, processing it all. Finally, with tears in her eyes, she nodded, saying that her mom was right, but that they were just going to miss her so much. The paradox of love is that sometimes distance is the secret ingredient to strengthening the most important bonds. When Eleanor decided to move into her own apartment, many people thought she was making a mistake. They asked how she was going to be all alone at her age. But Eleanor, with a mischievous smile, would respond that she now had more social life than a celebrity. The physical distance between Eleanor and her family turned out to be like an elastic band. As it stretched a little, the strength of the bond increased. Visits from her grandchildren became eagerly awaited adventures. They were no longer monotonous afternoons, but expeditions filled with laughter and discovery. The family psychologist Dr. Maria Elena Rodriguez points out that these conversations, although difficult, are crucial to maintaining healthy relationships. Open and honest communication can strengthen family bonds, even when it involves significant changes. Eleanor's new autonomy had a ripple effect on the entire family. Her daughter, Clara, confessed that seeing her mom so independent and happy had inspired her to go back to her own dreams. Freedom, it turns out, is contagious. Eleanor was no longer a burden or just a figurehead in her family's life. She was a woman with purpose, with dreams, and with the energy to pursue them. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said that it's not that we have little time, but that we lose a lot. And Eleanor was determined not to waste another second. Her story shows us that an act of self-love can transform not only a life, but an entire family. The greatest impact we can have on our children is not to teach them, but to live our own lives fully. Her bravery had a ripple effect, teaching her daughter and grandchildren a valuable lesson about the importance of independence and never stopping growing. The poet Khalil Gibran wrote that our children are not our children, but rather the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. The same, Eleanor discovered, applies to parents. We are not the property of our children. We are individuals with the right to our own lives. So, I invite you to ask yourself, are you living your life or the life that others expect of you? Remember, it's never too late to start again. The best gift you can give your family is your own happiness.